Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co host, Marissa Roy, and actually, I guess technically a second co host, Kaylee. She's joining us because she won't go down for a nap. But yeah, excited to be back after a little while. Marissa's back from Hawaii, and excited to catch up and talk about this topic that we have today.
Yeah. So today we will be finishing up the pre and postnatal mini series. Actually, no, we decided to add one on, but we will be continuing that series for 2 more episodes. So today will be about postpartum. So last episode, if you haven't caught it already, would be trimesters 2 and 3. We blended those for reasons you will find out if you go back and listen. But if you are recently postpartum, this will be a great listen for you. Or if you're expecting and about to deliver, this is going to be great for you to have some foresight on nutrition and training. And as usual, we'll just bust some myths of what people commonly say about this time and what you might actually be able to do.
Yes, because this is now my second postpartum journey. So it's been interesting to read about it and get certified in it and then to experience it yourself. And so I feel like I have a lot more insight now going through it a second time. And I think that this topic is very, very helpful because from shifting to postpartum fitness, I cannot tell you the amount of women that I have heard and talked to that have absolutely no idea what to do because they go in to their 6-week follow-up and they're told you're cleared for exercise and to listen to your body. And that is it. That is literally it. Hopefully, you have a better experience than that. But, I've heard also some women going to their 6-week appointment with their OB and they have no internal examination, or it's even a virtual examination, which to me is like mind blowing. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the postpartum care, aftercare when it comes with women. And it's a whole other story when it comes to C-section. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic and hopefully have some people feeling a lot better about what they should be doing postpartum to help.
Yeah. Or if like even just in those first 2 minutes, you're postpartum and you're like, you had that experience and you're like, oh shit, that's not normal for me to feel that lost and confused.
Yeah.
And that just brings you some relief, then I'm really glad to hear that. So we are going to give you guys some more tangible takeaways for the different phases per se of postpartum. Typically how I think of it, I don't know if it's any different for you, Christina, but I typically think of it as like immediately post delivery, kind of the nutrition, the training, the expectations that you place upon yourself. And then the first 6 weeks are kind of a phase in and of themselves with little sub phases inside. And then after 6 weeks, and then how to actually get ramped back up into things in that post 6 week period for both training and nutrition. And then, little spoiler, I guess, the episode we will record after this is how to lose weight while breastfeeding, because it's just a whole topic like to talk about. Okay, I can't lose weight, I can't go in a calorie deficit, I can't do X, Y, and Z while I'm breastfeeding, and want to debunk that a good bit and just give you like really tangible ways that you can reach your goals in the process of breastfeeding, even if it's not all the weight loss that you want to achieve. Like you could get started and not harm your breast milk supply and things like that. So spoiler alert, we're going to save that one for the next one, but otherwise training, nutrition in a general sense will be covered, and I think you'll walk away with a lot more than you might have right now.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one, and definitely I call it kind of like the return to exercise. And I actually just posted a graphic on my Instagram page the other day. And when it comes to exercise with postpartum, I like to think of it as a pyramid, right? And we have to have a really solid foundation to return to exercise. And if we skip that foundation and jump right back into what we were doing, like how we used to train, there are a lot of things that we can miss out on and a lot of further we can like further exacerbate some issues for you later on down the road. So you might look fantastic, but you're dealing with some things that are not very fun, and we'll kind of jump into that here in a little bit. But that's kind of like the analogy and like the picture I like to have is this having that super solid foundation, and we kind of move up this pyramid.
Beautiful. Sweet. Well, do you want to start with just kind of immediately post delivery, like that first like couple days, week post delivery? The reason I kind of isolate this as like a subcategory of time is because it's just like your body just went through this major trauma. You're either in the hospital or just getting home after being in the hospital, or maybe you're not in the hospital. Maybe it's a different situation. But a lot of women are kind of getting home and then they're like, holy crap, I have a baby now, and like literally a new human being that you're bonding with. And I typically just kind of, especially when I work with clients through this, that first like week, maybe 2 weeks even, we kind of just pause working together in that time in terms of like really on cadence communication and things. And it's like, let's just take a week, like settle into your literal new life for a sec. And then we'll usually like set a touch point or a call, like say 2 weeks postpartum, to then touch base on like, where are we at? What's our baseline right now? And start to like rebuild from there. Just because I think it's like, and families visiting, people are just, I mean, it's just a lot. So I have not been through it, but that's at least been my experience observing it. And I think that has gone over well with the clients that I have worked with through that time. And I think the number one priority at that point in time is rest and recovery, and just like settle into your life at that point. But that's kind of like my take on that, like first week, maybe up to 2 weeks. I would be curious to know if yours is similar or different.
Yeah, no, I do the exact same thing because it's like there's so much that changes. So like you are, you just went through, I want to say something traumatic, like, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah,
Like you
it's
can have
physically trauma on the body.
yes, yeah, it is a lot to do for the body. And then just like the hormonal changes, I think they talk about like it is one of the biggest hormonal shifts you will ever have is going from I'm pregnant to immediately I'm not pregnant. And so there is a huge a huge change in all of your hormones. And this affects a lot of different things. Like you'll probably have night sweats for a couple days postpartum. That's something I didn't know. I was like, why is like at night? I was like, is the
Why is it so
hospital
hot?
like? Yeah, I was like, is the air like? I couldn't figure it out. And then I remembered like reading it, and I was like, oh yeah. So that can affect a lot of different things. And I think I've talked about this before where like my mood and my emotions were like uncontrollable. And it was something that was very weird for me. And I'm sure you would probably feel the exact same way. You're like, why
I
am
think
I
so.
crying?
I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. Cause you're just, like, I feel like, you're pretty straight laced a majority of the time. And like, same thing. I don't cry a whole lot. I don't really have these like huge up and downs. So then to feel like I literally have no idea why I'm crying. I'm happy. I'm not sad. Like just weird. It just doesn't feel like yourself. So you have all of these hormonal changes going on. Your body is trying to get back to baseline. You're trying to heal. You literally have a wound the size of a dinner plate, like in your abdomen that you're recovering from. And then, like you said, okay, now I have a baby literally on my chest. I need to figure out breastfeeding. I need to figure out like I need to change diapers. I need to do X, Y, Z, and like, but it hurts to go pee in the bathroom, and like there's so much. And then on top of that, you have the fatigue for however long your childbirth and labor was, and in delivery, fatigue, right? Because now you have a newborn. Some moms experience colic with their babies where they just literally cry all the time unless they're sleeping, which is so difficult, like emotionally. So you have this like sleep deprivation, like fatigue, and then on top of all this, like you now also like, it's so different when you're pregnant and you have this cute baby bump till all of a sudden, like, okay, the baby's out, but I still look like 6 months pregnant. Like, what the heck? So you're now dealing with like body image. And now I feel like no matter how much you prepare for postpartum body image, it's just really hard. And you feel all of this like societal pressure to like bounce back, even though you know, like, I need to give myself grace. It's like you feel like, oh gosh, I need to like cover up my bump now. And it's just really weird. So there's just so many different things happening immediately postpartum. And like, yes, you still need to heal and like adjust. So especially if this is your first baby, like, give yourself time. I don't think it really makes a whole lot of sense to be thinking about like, hitting macros or anything like that. So uh, the big theme here within those first, 1 to 2 weeks is just rest and recovery. And if you do want to jump into any sort of exercise, I say that like in a very, very general term, like we're not
Yeah.
talking workouts, but just exercise. Like, you can focus on your breath. Like, there is diaphragmatic breathing, trying to kind of like reconnect your pelvic floor. You can incorporate some very gentle, very light mobility, especially like I know a lot of women have difficulties with like lower back pain, like when they're henching over, breastfeeding. So like just doing some gentle movement that will help with kind of like general aches and pains. But we really, really want to spend a lot of time resting and recovering. So this is not like 30, 40, 60-minute sessions. This is just very light things that you can even do like horizontally, right? Like, you can work on connection breathing, like you can work on mobility while you're in bed recovering. So this is just very, very, very gentle movement during this
Yeah.
time.
I also often will tell women in this time period, like, you're not going to like not leave your bed. Usually there's cases where that might be the case. But like, you're not going to like stop like living completely, right? You will probably at a minimum walk around your house or go to the bathroom or pick something up off the floor. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like, you're not going to go back to work. You're not going to do like a marathon. But if you're doing the dishes or you're like, I don't know, picking up your baby, like at that point, maybe it's only 7, 8 pounds, but you're moving your body after it's gone through, like you said, an injury the size of a dinner plate, right? And so one thing you can work on during that initial time period is like, can you just practice doing those things with decent form? And like, again, the breathing, trying to connect to your core is really hard. I've heard through that time period and just postpartum in general, connecting back to your core muscles because they've been stretched, they've been torn. But if you can just be mindful of that with like squatting down to pick something up or lifting something above your head, it's like you're probably going to do those things, those activities of daily life. Even like rolling over, getting out of bed, like that takes muscles. And so I think, and for somebody who like is either athletic or plays sports or lifts weights and is a fitness enthusiast, like this might sound like really dumb to you, like on the surface, because you're like, no, like there's no way I would ever be that like, I don't know, incapable is like the best word I can think of that someone might think. It's not about being incapable. It's about like you're literally healing from something big. And I think people tend to underestimate how much of an impact that can have, especially in those early stages of recovery. So it's just giving yourself some damn grace and like allowing yourself to like think about progressing in those areas, even though they sound really, really small. It can make a huge impact on the next month, the post 6 weeks, the ramp up back to like real exercise. Like, it does have an impact there. So that's kind of like a perspective shift that I like to offer. People tend to respond well to that, especially our high achiever ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I want to say, so I gave this analogy of the pyramid, and this is something that made me think of it, that I should have brought up earlier, is like, we're kind of going through like, okay, like immediately postpartum, like 6 weeks, da 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 da. But just knowing that like you can move faster or slower through this, like through these phases, if you feel either
Yeah.
ready or if you do not feel ready to move on to the next phase, because everyone's pregnancy, like you could have a fantastic pregnancy, no issues, but have a very traumatic birth process. So,
Yeah.
and there's a lot on your body. You could have a really awful pregnancy, but have a fantastic labor and delivery, and you're good to go. So, I feel like I experienced kind of both of those things with Colton. It wasn't necessarily anything I would call like traumatic in the sense of like I have like PTSD from giving birth. But it was for my body in the sense that like I think I pushed probably for around 30, I don't know, it felt like eternity, but probably was maybe like 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. But the amount of like pressure that puts on your pelvic floor to be, and again, I was just bearing down, which is like the absolute worst thing that you can do. I pushed way too early. I think he was too high, and my like just so many different things. If I could go back in time, um, but like that pressure, like I had a lot of symptoms postpartum. And I had a second degree tear. I had bilateral labial tearing. So I had a lot, I had a lot of issues with just even like walking around the first like month. Like I went back and looked at videos because again, I'm doing a lot of comparing from like first and second pregnancy. And I'm literally like hobbling, like wobbling side to side. Like I couldn't even walk. So I didn't want to rush anything. And I felt like there were a lot of people who were further along who were walking. I couldn't even fathom going on a walk outside. So I do want to throw that in there because I think it's very, very, very important that if you do need to take this slow, that is okay. There are so many other factors to consider. If you are not sleeping through the night, like if you have some issues like mentally, like if you have postpartum anxiety or depression, like so many other things that we need to focus on before like let me get back into exercise. But again, my second birth experience, night and day difference. Like I think I cooked dinner the second night I was home. For my in-laws. Like I felt good. I was walking around, I was moving, and I have felt like I have been able to return a lot quicker. I don't want to say that any one experience is better than the other. It's just your reality. And so to go at this at your own pace. So I think
Yeah.
that that's very, very, very important to like consider. So I know it's very cliche to say like listen to your body. But I think that that's really important. And I guess we can kind of talk a little bit about what that looks like as you're going through these things, kind of like some things that you should look out for because like you might be like, I don't really know what
Yeah.
to
It's like the
like
doctor
what
said, listen to my body, but like, what the F does that mean?
right, exactly. So there are some other things to think about when we come and we're like, okay, what is listening to my body? So like if you feel any sort of pain, if you feel any sort of pelvic heaviness, that can kind of look and feel a little bit different from everyone, but just something just doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah.
If you have any sort of leakage, and this can be urinary, it can be bowel leakage, and it can be during certain movements like sneezing, coughing, anything like that. If you have increased pelvic pressure along with the heaviness, that's something to kind of look out for. And then the other thing is like again, any pain or discomfort in your low back, your pelvis, your incision site if you had a C-section, um, fatigue like beyond any sort of like just normal like sleep deprivation from having a newborn. If you feel any sort of like bulging or pushing in the abdominal wall, and then also if you have any sort of diastasis that you feel like is worsening and not getting better. So those are all things to kind of like look out for and kind of might be an indication of, okay, maybe I need to take things a little bit slower.
Yeah. Or at least like just look into it. Right. And
Yeah.
like consult with a professional, like get it checked out so that you know, like, am I worried about nothing or like, is there really something going on here? Because
Right.
I think sometimes too, we can kind of like scare ourselves. So it's like, I think pay mind, put more caution out there than not, but like then consult with experts because then you can have peace of mind or know what you need to do moving forward.
The other thing I didn't think of is your postpartum bleeding. So I thought that you'd bleed like a lot more postpartum than you actually do. And so you are going to have discharge for anywhere from a couple weeks to maybe even 6. But what we want to see is almost kind of like it's like being on your period, except on a very like extended time. Instead of like 4 to 5 days, it's like 4 to 5 to 6 weeks. But it's still that kind of like same progression where it's like kind of heavy, like a lot of like very bright coloring. And then it's going to get a little darker. It's going to get a little lighter. And then it's going to start to kind of turn kind of that like brownish kind of, whatever. And that is going to be for a little while. But if you jump back into exercise and you have more bleeding, if anything is heavier, or if you feel like, okay, well, now I was this kind of like darkish brown, but now things are bright red and pink again, that is another indication of, ooh, okay, maybe I'm taking it a little too far. So all things to discuss with a professional, but just another thing to look out for. And then if you're anything like me, I thought that like I was like doing great. I jumped back into exercise and all of a sudden I had this bleeding. And then I had started my period. So that was unexpected. But that can also happen as well. So just something to look out for.
Yeah. So I think the like general theme that I'm seeing with all of this is that, especially just like trends over time, like just like with weight loss or monitoring progress, it's like, are things consistently getting better as a whole? Or like, is it like got a little better and then it got way worse all of a sudden? Like that's kind of your yellow flag, your yield sign to be like, let's just check. Let's just look into this before we proceed further. So would you say like that's time frame wise what we've covered so far? Is that the first 6 weeks that we're pretty much in?
Yeah, I mean, I look to do a little bit more. I feel like we've covered like immediately postpartum, but there's a little bit more that you can do up to 6 weeks. But also with the disclaimer that you can go like as fast or as slow, not as fast, but fast or slow through this. I just want to remind you guys that like slow is fast when you're going through postpartum. So like I would rather someone take things slow rather than pushing yourself, because you can save yourself from a lot of setbacks or future problems that can prevent you from properly healing. So again, you could worsen your diastasis. You could have prolapse, or like cause prolapse by a lot of different things by weakening your pelvic floor. Again, you can worsen incontinence and things like that. So I really urge people to err on the side of caution. So just want to put that out there. There was one other thing that I had just thought of. When I was working with my first pelvic floor therapist, I was talking to her about this because she was like, it's great that so many like influencers, fitness professionals are talking about like pelvic floor therapy and postpartum health. And she's like, because I think it's bringing a lot of awareness, but there are also people who are jumping back into exercise. Like I've seen people literally like bring their 1 week old to the gym so they can go back and like they're squatting, they're like doing all of these things, even though it's like body weight, but I'm like, ooh. And so I do want to warn you, because she's like, I have worked with these people, so I've seen this firsthand. It's like, yes, they've bounced back, right? They look incredible, but I'm seeing them, they've got stage 3, stage 4 prolapse. Like they're peeing their pants like left and right. They like the multiple times a day they're changing their underwear, or like all of these things that are really
Avoidable.
debilitating. And yes, and 100% avoidable. But it's like, it's hard because it's like when you see a fitness professional with abs, you're like, oh, they must know what they're talking about. Like they're super fit. And it's like, yeah, you might see someone who looks fantastic, but you don't know what they are actually dealing with. So just really, really urge to slow as fast when it comes to this. So kind of moving up the pyramid. So weeks 3 to 4, again, just kind of continuing with like mobility, reconnecting with your deep floor. Like you can kind of bring, kind of progress. And this is like the theme. You want to continue to progress on what you previously did and the step below you. So like you can now kind of work on like deep core activation, pelvic floor exercises, kind of like full body mobility. And this is just about, again, reconnecting with your body, not rushing into strenuous activity. And then weeks 5 to 6, I feel like, okay, now I kind of have this like gentle strength, kind of like functional exercise, kind of like what you were talking about previously. I'm going to be picking up my baby. So like if I like, okay, squats, like, right, like you can do things where you're just feeling more functional. Again, if you're able to, and you know your core and your pelvic floor still need time to rebuild strength. So I like having our clients do gravity eliminated positions. So this is a way that you're able to reintroduce movement in a way that's still gentle on your body because you are still healing. Your stomach, your core may still kind of feel like jello. I mean, at least that's how I felt from my first time around. So um, all of these things are, again, working us getting back into exercise the way that we're used to. So I think, is there anything that you want to, you want to add?
No, it's pretty much along those lines. I was going to say closer to that 6 week mark. It's like, all right, well, if you want to try like a set of 10 body weight squats or like some glute bridges and like just start feeling the activation of your muscles again, like, and like really just like feeling the activation of it and like trying to make that connection again. That's the body weight stuff. I definitely think is very much like if you're feeling good, you're feeling comfortable, yeah, that's where we can have at starting with some of that. It's not a full workout. It's not like I'm spending 30 to 45 minutes doing all this, but like, I don't know, a set or two of 10 slow, like just kind of like starting to feel a little bit of a burn at this point. You know, you haven't worked out in 5, 6 weeks. So a very little something, you could actually feel the muscles burn a little bit. But just starting to feel the purpose is feeling like you're reconnecting with those muscle groups, as well as pelvic floor and core as well. So just kind of, like you said, feeling functional in your body again.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's, breathing is really key here. So we want to make sure that we're engaging our core, we're protecting our pelvic floor.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so all of this is really important. But again, like listening to your body.
I
So
was going
one
to
of the
say,
things.
actually, one thing to add to that would be another purpose behind that in those weeks would be practicing good habits with
Mm,
how you're moving. Because especially like after a hiatus, like you've kind of got a blank slate to work with. So why not use it to practice good habits with? If you know you're going to be progressing back into exercise soonish, then you might as well practice with good habits of breathing the right way, bracing the right way. And so it's not just about like the ramp up back to it, but it's about the precedent you're setting right now.
yeah, I love that. And then the other thing I wanted to chat about too is like we're kind of talking a little bit, I feel like more so for like uh vaginal births, because I feel like there's a whole kind of additional layer when it comes to like C-section recovery.
Yeah.
And again, this goes back to um a lot of women, like if you were to have a major surgery, like if you had your ACL, like ACL surgery or like a knee replacement, hip replacement, anything like that, like you would be given a lot of resources. You'd go to uh, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word right now. PT, right? You'd go
Mhm.
to physical therapy. Like you'd have a course of action for like what you need to do to get up and running. And you have this major abdominal surgery. They're cutting through 7 layers into your stomach, and it's just like, okay, now here's a baby, take care of the baby, and there's no recovery information. So you have no information on how to help with the incision site, like how to make sure that you're properly healing,
Solid.
to make sure that you don't, yeah, it's crazy that you don't have any sort of like reopening, like you tear the incisions, because that has happened to some of my friends. In avoiding any sort of complications, or how do you help to heal properly so you don't have issues with like pain at the incision site like years later. So like information on how to care for your scars, like, so a lot of different issues that you need to do in that sense. So yeah, that's like a whole other whole other tangent. um but one of the things, it's like, okay, now we're at 6 weeks. And so I think a lot of people are like, kind of like, well, why is this, this magical 6 week
Yeah.
op? Like, who kind of came up with that? And so, a lot of times they do this because after delivery, it takes the uterus about 6 weeks to contract back to its pre-pregnancy size. So by then, like your uterus should be pretty much healed. And that's kind of why that 6 weeks, like a timeline is there. And that's typically when you go in to get medical clearance. Hopefully, you do have an internal exam. And I feel like it's kind of just checking that box of like, okay, I went. There are no major red flags. You're typically cleared for exercise, for sex, and things like that. But I would recommend to ask your OB, ask your provider for a referral to see a pelvic floor therapist. There are some states that require a referral to go see one, and some that don't. You can go see some on your own. I think that maybe there are some things that will change as far as insurance, like if you have to have some sort of diagnosis to go see one. So I don't know all of the inside scoop, I guess, when it comes to that. So just check with your provider. But I definitely recommend everyone. I love there's a pelvic floor therapist that you and I have worked with previously. I really, really love her. But she talks, if you pee, poop, or procreate, you should go see a pelvic floor therapist. And at least to have an initial consultation, because at least you can know, okay, I have a forefinger with gap, diastasis, or, oh, I have some internal scarring, or, hey, I do have some prolapse. Because at least that you have an idea of like what to do and what you need to work on versus you're cleared.
Yeah.
Because most OBs do not check for diastasis. They don't check for like if you have any sort of like scar tissue like that needs to be worked, like nothing. So going to see a pelvic floor therapist, at least for the initial consultation, like I will like die on a hill telling everyone to go see one. So those are kind of like the first 6 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think I really have anything to add on up to that. But then at that clearance, it's really interesting, like just the one thing that number is based on. Like, oh, that's when it's supposed to be shrunk. But like, if we know anything about the human body, is that it's very individual, and that like, oh, it's a lot of tissue healing, internal healing, hormonal shifts. It's like it could very well be a different timeline. And for some people, woohoo, maybe it's faster. And for others, it might be a lot slower. So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to just know like where that timeline came from, because it like shows you like how maybe outdated or like not founded in much that it is. Like it's just like it's helpful for most people to have like that much of a waiting period. And I do appreciate it for that. But I think it's also like another reminder of you need to listen to your own symptoms, right? So I'm going to operate here off of the assumption that you are not experiencing any of the red or yellow flags we had mentioned up to this point. At the 6-week timeline, you get the clearance for exercise, you're pumped, you've been doing all your homework, you've been doing the breathing, you've been doing the pelvic floor connection, you've been doing some body weight squats at home, and you're like, all right, I'm cleared. Now what?
Yeah.
So,
And I should have added this into, like, you can also incorporate gentle walking. Like, walking is
oh
one of the
yeah,
best things that you should do. We never outright said that, so I
yeah,
do want to make like
walk,
you
walk,
can
walk.
start that. Yeah, you can start that like week 1, week 2. Again, and this
Yeah,
is not like 3-mile long walks like any or rucking, but it's just like some gentle, 5-10 minute walks around the neighborhood or anything like that. But
yeah, just what you can
okay.
tolerate.
Yeah. So, okay. So now we're cleared for exercise, right? So
We
it's like,
do.
woo. So, now we want to continue with the functional exercise, but we want to do like against gravity movements. So you can do some standing exercises. And so like you might go from like a seated overhead press to now a standing overhead press. We want to do more weight bearing movements. And again, continuing to still look for the same symptoms that we talked about previously with how your core, your pelvic floor are doing. But you might still want to do like incline push-ups, because we're still wanting to control that intra-abdominal pressure. We don't want to jump right back into anything super crazy. So that's kind of what I talk about with like 7 weeks, like 7 to 11. But I think that's pretty much it. So it's like getting more and more back to that regular exercise that you're used to.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I think the more seasoned you are with exercise, lifting, and knowing your body, I'll say for like someone like you, or I don't know, Tia Claire Toomey, like a super like crazy CrossFitter, it's like their baseline is also a little different. I wouldn't say to skip steps, but I would say like know yourself enough to like go through those initial steps and be like, all right, this is like feeling good. Like I can move a little bit quicker than this. Or if you are that type of person who's like very seasoned, like it might be very tempting to skip steps or go fast through steps to where like I just like to think of it like this. If your pregnancy, because at this point, if you're listening to this, you're either pregnant or just had a baby, you know how fast those 9 months went. Like it fucking flew. That's what everyone says. And every time someone I know is pregnant, I'm like, that was fast. It's over. Like it's already there. So it's really no different right now with coming back to exercise of like taking those like smaller steps now can like really accelerate you in week 12, 16, 24 postpartum. But I will say just to listen to your body thing of like, if you are, let's say doing sets of squats with the bar at some point on week 8 or 9 or 10, and you're like, all right, I've been doing this for 2 weeks now and we have no warning signs. Like you can move on. I think also don't be crippled by fear just because you did have a baby. I think something that I'll pose on the flip side of the general tone we've been taking with this conversation is like, I do want you to be cautious and I do want you to be mindful of your body. But at the same time, I don't want you to take on the persona or the identity that you are now delicate or weak or broken because of what your body went through. Right. And so when you do get to these kind of later points and seasons, it's time to really start reminding yourself like you are capable, you are strong, and that you are, and like as much as people hate the term, like you are capable of quote unquote bouncing back. And I don't think necessarily that has to have a horrible connotation. It's just you are capable of not just returning to your fitness level that you once were, but you can even surpass that. There's no limit placed on you because you went through birth. Like our bodies are designed for that and are meant to recover from that. And the human body is freaking amazing. So like, just don't underestimate yourself either. Take the necessary steps to go slow, to go fast. But when you are in motion and things are going well, you got to give yourself some of that confidence too, because I think the worst thing that you could do is like just place a bunch of limiting beliefs on yourself for the long haul of like, I just can't do that anymore because I have kids now, like, and I hear that too much to where like that also is like, ugh. So I had to say it.
Yeah. And yeah, because it's like if you are someone who quote unquote bounces back, like there is literally nothing wrong with that. If you have no symptoms,
Yeah,
you did
please
everything
do.
properly. Yeah, like there's a couple postpartum women that I follow, and like I had messaged her yesterday. I'm like, girl, you look incredible. And I know the work that she did. This is also like her third it's her third pregnancy, childbirth. She's like been through it before. She's got this routine, which is like amazing, but she looks fantastic. And she did everything right, which is, quote
We
unquote
love
right.
that.
Which I love to see.
Yeah.
And a lot of the same mentality with like the slow is fast. But yeah, if you bounce back, like there's nothing wrong with it. You do it properly. But there are some people who take a little bit longer, and that's totally fine. But like you were saying, Marissa, it's like, okay, I'm gonna like we do these things, we do these foundational things because if we do absolutely nothing and then we try to jump back into squatting, it's like, well, we could potentially not have that like coordination and balance. Like you like may not know how to properly breathe, like you're not properly aligned and all these things. And so you are adding some issues, like you could have just a lot of different issues, like as far as injuring yourself in the future. You're overcompensating different muscles, and so it's just nice to kind of build on that, because I will say your body does feel pretty foreign
Yeah.
postpartum. That was something that I wasn't really ready for. To go from feeling like, oh yeah, I can squat, I can lift, I can jump, I can run, to like, I don't feel
I forgot
like
how to
my
move.
yeah, or like movement patterns feel weird. And like I even a couple days ago, I like started to film some straight like a deadlifts for my coach. And I was like, God, he's gonna think that this is a joke that I'm doing this with the bar. He's like a, big bodybuilder coach. And then I was like, but I want to make sure that I have the proper muscle patterns again, and doing this the right way so I can continue to progress and not mess anything up. So even though it feels kind of silly sending this over, hey, does this look good? Can I move on?
Yeah. It's kind of funny you say that, because I was like kind of reflecting on it too. And I think it's a great opportunity to like take on a white belt mentality with everything, like white belt mentality with
Mhm.
training, nutrition, like just like clean slate. Like, let me learn this. And no matter how seasoned you are, like I learned this morning, over a decade into my fitness journey, that I am not bracing my like top of core rib cage correctly for a lot of
Mm.
exercises. And it was very humbling. So, and it was honestly just through a white belt mentality, I'm learning skills that are new to me. So I'm challenged in new ways, and it's forcing me to kind of like expand my concepts, and taught me that I actually could be doing a lot of things wrong. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to learn that though, because it might actually correct some other injuries, but we won't talk about that.
Do you follow Meg Squats on Instagram?
Not anymore, but I know who she is.
Okay. Well, she's pregnant for the second time. And she talked a little bit about her issues with like showing postpartum or pregnancy and postpartum content, because she's like, I know a majority of my audience like doesn't follow me for that, but it's also feels like inauthentic to not share that, because I'm clearly pregnant and like my
Yeah.
movement patterns are going to change because of that. So she is sharing a lot more, which I really like. And she was like, it took me a very long time to learn how to properly breathe through my own pregnancy, through certifications, through my own work, through additional like courses. So yeah, it is
You
it's
think you know, but white belt mentality.
yeah. So definitely want to reinforce that. So now we're kind of like, okay, like months 3 to 6, like we're past the initial 12 weeks, and so now you can start to return again, if you are ready, to high impact and high velocity. So kind of like running and jumping. So as your strength, as your core strength, pelvic floor function, all of those things continue to improve. Like, okay, you can reintroduce these movements, and also like kind of like those dynamic exercises. And it's like, okay, we're still monitoring, we're still seeing how your body is progressing, taking things slowly to prevent injury or any further setbacks. So I am, as of Monday, so I guess I'm 12 and a half weeks postpartum.
See,
I
that
have
was
been
fast.
seeing, I know, it's wild having a second one. And then ironically, I've actually got pelvic floor therapy in an hour and a half. But I've been seeing my pelvic floor therapist every week since 6 weeks, actually maybe even 7 weeks postpartum, because they had a wait to get in. But I've been talking with them. I've been doing all these things. This is really funny. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I went in and they were like, I think like they were like, how does this band feel? I was doing some exercises with them. I was like, this is like, I was like, I was like, I literally am not trying to be cocky because this sounds so silly. I was like, but this like isn't doing anything. There's like no resistance here. And I'm like, oh, okay, man, we're gonna have to use this band. And they're like, we've never used this band with a patient before. And they were like,
Love that
they're like,
feeling.
how does that feel? And I was like, I was like, there is resistance, but it does not feel hard or challenging. They're like, you're our strongest patient. It's like, I mean, I don't know if I could really take that as a compliment because I'm assuming like your average age of your patient here is probably like 60 or 70. And they're like, well, yeah, that's kind of fair. But I came home and told my husband, I was like, I don't mean to brag, but like I'm the strongest patient here. But I've been working with them and I have been progressing very quickly compared to how, I mean, I was going to my previous pelvic floor therapist with my first pregnancy for months, like months. I had a lot of work to do, a lot of internal work before I could even get into like the pelvic floor exercises. And so I'm just like kind of flying through everything. And it's been weird mentally for me to allow myself, like, they were like, yeah, you're like, you can start to introduce some like light jogging. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, cause I'm like technically not even at 12 weeks, right? So that was like very interesting to be going through that. But like, yeah, I've been like jogging. I've actually been incorporating some running. And like couldn't even fathom doing that my first time around at 12 weeks postpartum. So it's been very, very interesting. But it is like kind of just getting back into that type of exercise. So high impact, high velocity.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would add on that is weight training wise, like again, just don't skip steps, like just progress week by week. Like let's say you started the prior phase we talked about with like the bar and like body weight and stuff. It's like, okay, now go to like a weight that just feels like really easy. Like jump up just a little bit to where like, all right, it's maybe a little challenging, and then like progress week by week based on how it's feeling. And this is where I would probably just use the RPE scale to quantify like 1 to 10, 1 being feels like air, and 10 being 1 being feels like what you just described about that band, and 10 being like I'm failing when I touch this weight. I would probably just air around like a 5 to start. Like just don't make it like super hard. Just go through the motions, make sure you're all good, and then like use the scale, like go up each week 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we hang out about around a 7 to 9, so you just hang out there. But and then you might find that your 7 to 9 is not the weight that it used to be. That's okay. Just keep progressing in that range with percentage or proximity to failure and how hard you're like pushing yourself and how much you're perceiving that discomfort in the training. But I think just, again, it's this weird balance between I'm not broken or worse off or more delicate than I used to be. But at the same time, I am also becoming accepting and giving myself grace for the fact that I might not be at the same starting place that I wanted to be in terms of strength or recovery. And that might not be your situation. Maybe it's sunshine and rainbows, but like I would say for more than not, it's probably going to be something like a dance like that between those two, like seemingly like dichotomous thoughts, right? And so it seems like they can't coexist, but I truly believe that they can. Like you can empower yourself while also accepting a not so ideal like starting place if you're kind of ramping back up.
Yeah. And I think it's also important again that you can move back down and you can move up if you feel like you're ready to take on more things, or if you need to like, wow, something is just not feeling right. I'm having some issues, and that's totally okay. So I want to speak to the mom or potential mom who's feeling like recovery is going really slow, because that was me with my first. And I remember going into my home gym and trying to do body weight squats, and my knees hurt and the movement didn't feel good. And I was like, how in the world am I ever going to squat heavy again when these feel impossible? And then it was, how am I going to see progress doing body weight squats or doing these 10, 15-minute workouts because that's all the time in the world I have. And it does, it feels, and we've have so many clients who feel this way, is like, how is a 10-minute workout, body weight or bands, whatever, going to get me results?
Yeah.
And it's hard. And you're like, I still look pregnant, and you're going into the gym and you're doing these things, and it's like, feels dumb. It's like, I'm used to dedicating 1 to 2 hours to my lifts. And now I have to, I mean, this morning I literally worked out with a friend of mine, and we did a set, we finished a set, and then my baby woke up, and I had to go feed Kaylee, and we had to go take a break. And then I had to keep her awake on a blanket while Colton was running around, and we did another set. And then she was getting fussy, and then my Colton was like working in between, and I'm like, this is not what I'm used to. This is not what I quote unquote enjoy, right? Like having to go slow, but this is just the phase of life that I'm in, and these are what my workouts are. And if I continue to do this consistently time and time again, I will see results.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very difficult mindset shift. But I continue to have that mentality of, if I just continue showing up and doing a little bit over time, I will lose weight. And I did. I lost 55 pounds postpartum. And it's like, you just have to keep going in those moments, even if you are not feeling like you were going to see progress, or progress is very, very, very slow.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just like you said, it's just confronting reality. I think a lot of times we think like, oh, this is so terrible, it's an awful experience. It's like, no, it's just what it is. And I think the more we can like come to that neutral place, there's more acceptance there of like, this is what it is, like, let me work with this, versus if it's something we perceive to be negative. And that might be really hard to shake, but like, if we can get away from thinking this is so bad, then we're more likely to like want to work with what we can. So no, that's beautiful. I love that you tied that in, because I'm sure somebody who would click on this is probably not somebody who's like, yeah, I'm doing great, I don't need any help, right? It's probably someone who feels like they're struggling. So I do not have anything else on this particularly. I think kind of what I'm reading from you between the lines is that how to lose weight while breastfeeding is more of a nutrition focus, like bringing in the nutrition side and just wrapping this all up in a bow sort of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say that, like, when it comes to postpartum nutrition, it is really important, especially in those early stages, because again, we want to focus on healing our body. And I might need to go grab Kaylee.
Yeah.
She's not being a very good sleeper for me today. But nutrition can help with healing. And I
Yes.
think that's really, really important. So again, kind of like what we talked about with all of the pregnancy things, is we want to focus on nutrient dense foods.
Yeah.
Like, these are going to help promote recovery. They are going to help with, like, because your body is literally in a state of repair, like healing from childbirth. So making sure that you're prioritizing those foods that are rich in minerals and vitamins and healthy fats and lean tissue, because you're trying to aid in repairing tissue. And then it's also going to help with energy. So that's really important. And then also hydration, especially when it comes to breastfeeding, but we'll touch on that. But that will help with water, that will help with your mental state, milk production, and energy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I think much more detail in the next one. But I guess since Kaylee's being a little fussy, we'll take that as a little bit of a sign and tie this one up, and then we'll get into. And honestly, I'll just change the title. If you're listening to this now, then you're just a trooper for being all the way through at 54 minutes.
Nutrition, yeah.
But I'm just going to call this one postpartum training and recovery, and then the next one will be nutrition, how to lose weight while breastfeeding.
Okay, so maybe we just cut out that last part, or we can leave it as a teaser. I don't know, whatever. But we can definitely just cover nutrition in general when it comes to postpartum. But Kaylee's losing it, so I need to go grab her. But thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christina and Fit. Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening and hope to see you back next week.